Happy New Year and welcome to our first Talking Europe debate of 2018 here on France 24. Well, on today's programme, we are at the European Parliament in Brussels and we're peering into our metaphorical crystal ball to give some predictions for the year ahead in Europe. Joining us are three members of the European Parliament. With me from Poland, Zdzisław Krasnodębski. Thank you very much for being with us. Spanish MEP Javier Nart.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And from France, we have Alain Lamassoure. Thank you very much for being with us. Now, we're going to start with just a simple question to each of you, really. Europe in 2018, do you see it as being more fractured than ever by Brexit, by Catalonia, by issues between the EU and Poland, perhaps? Or, as Mr. Juncker and Mr. Macron want us to see, more united than ever? Mr. Lamassoure, we'll come to you first.
Well, I would say that for Europe this year will be a year of hope. Because last year at the same time, or the year before, we were looking for a new good piece of information. And but now, because it was the time after the Brexit decision, Trump's election, and there were big question marks in France. Will Mrs. Le Pen win the election, etc., etc. And the economic situation was not very reassuring. Now it's very different. The economy is booming. Mr. Macron is a strong French leader and particularly European-oriented. And we are in the run-up of the next European election, and this year will be time in every member state and, of course, among ourselves, to take stock of what we have done in the past, the lessons to be drawn from all the crises we have been living through, and what are we willing to do together for the next mandate. So it will be a year of hope.
OK, well, we always like a message of hope and optimism. Mr. Krasnodębski, if I come to you, do you share that optimism?
Not totally, I must say, because there are numerous problems and there are always emerging new problems. For instance, Catalonia was a little unexpected in last year. But what I am optimistic about that maybe, we start better communicate and to talk to each other. Because I think there are many structural problems in Europe. What I am always very concerned is a kind of imbalances between in the center of Europe, actually, because sometimes there's an opinion the problem is the East. We see now the problem is Spain. We have a problem in Germany. Maybe we start in this year to solve the problem.
Well, Mr. Nart, Mr. Krasnodębski mentioned there, the issues with Catalonia and Spain and the disagreements between them and Europe as well as something that is fracturing Europe. How do you see 2018 panning out? Well,
all years are, let me say, crucial years. If you say, for example, in Spain, we have each year the match of the century, Real Madrid-Barcelona. So we have 4 matches of the century by year. It's a little bit too much. So, of course, there are problems in the European Union, but at the same time, there are chances in the European Union. Brexit, for example, that is a major issue, is at the same time a great chance to give us the opportunity to get depth, to go into integration and to go over all the impediments that before were presented by the British. So we have to go for integration and for a better understanding and a common policy in security and defense, for example, and foreign affairs. And so I do think that even something that I don't like, that is the Brexit, gives us the opportunity to be stronger in the European Union. And for example, in Catalonia, let me say so. Today's newspaper is El País, is the most important newspaper in Spain. What is the main concern in Catalonia? 60% is lack of work, and 16% is independence. This is the point. And about Puigdemont is the best character of Monty Python, the flying circus today.
Talking about the exiled president of
Catalonia. The exile is a comedy. I've been under Franco regime, and I know what is exile from people that were part of my party. I was in the Popular Socialist Party. So saying exile, saying political prisoners is a slap in the face of real political prisoners. A politician has not the possibility of doing what he wants if he's breaking the law. Because if you break the law, you have the law on you. That's it.
Indeed, well, Mr. Nart, you're from the Ciudadanos party, which in the Catalan regional election won the highest single number of votes in the regional election, and it's anti-independence, as you stated. However, the pro-independence factions got a majority of the seats, so we're going to have to see how that pans out. This brings us on nicely to Catalonia. Do you think that Europe has a strategy? Because we saw a mixed reaction, I think, from Europe as all of this referendum business panned out in Catalonia.
No, there was no mixed reaction from Europe. It's not a European issue. It's a Spanish issue and it's a Catalonia issue.
But it could destabilise Europe.
No, not at all. No? Not at all. Not at all. It's not a matter for the Union. It could be one if things went worse and worse, and if both parties, both sides, turn to the Union for help and to mediate.
Well, unfortunately, I'm sure this is a debate that could go on forever and ever, but we will move on to another big topic for 2018. Of course, Brexit. We've been talking about it all through 2017. We know that many big issues were resolved to a certain degree at the end of the year, including the Irish border, the so-called divorce bill, and citizens' rights. However, many question marks do still remain on that point. Our reporters Catherine Norris-Trent and Jean Barrère have been to the UK to find out a bit more.
Dutch national Joris is building a future outside of the UK, renovating his attic in order to sell his house for the best price and move back to Europe following Brexit.
After a year, we still haven't got anything confirmed about, our future, and rather than waiting for that, we just decide we're going to just plan our own exit strategy.
The provisional plan is to take his family to live in Amsterdam, but it's proving complicated.
But what if I don't know some words in Dutch?
It's okay, you're going to learn them very quickly. But what do you think? Would you move or would you want to stay in London?
Stay in London.
Oh dear.
Joris and his wife love living in London and see Brexit as a personal betrayal.
What have I done wrong? Why do you want me to leave, I come here with the best intentions and you're kind of being vomited out, like to just go back where you came from. That's the message you get from it.
French teacher Claudine and her American husband are still wrangling with whether to stay or go and uproot their home, their careers, and their English-born children.
Yay! I do.
Do you?
We end up crying a lot, both of us in the kitchen. When we're talking about what will happen, we cry with our friends. There you see, just talking about it.
Are you going to cry?
No, ça va. No, I'm not going to cry because I can see you, and so I'm okay. It's like we can't move forward with our lives. We can't make plans without destroying what we've got here. Look at this one. What do you think?
They've started to look at potential properties to buy in France. In the space of a year, 122,000 EU citizens have left the UK.
Look at that! Wow, wow!
There we go, some people living in the UK who are still uncertain about what the future holds for them. Now, many people living in the UK have an idea that the European Union is punishing the United Kingdom for wanting to leave the Union. Mr. Krasnodębski, if I come back to you, do you think that the UK can win over Europe? Is that what the question is? Do the two sides understand each other?
No, I don't see. I think that there is a now difficult period of transition, but I am very optimistic that in a couple of years it would be settled again. Now we are moving to the next stage of negotiation, and it's the questions, how would be the future relation between Great Britain, United Kingdom, and the EU. There are many also my countrymen and countrywomen in Great Britain. They are of course concerned about the situation. But I think that this problem actually it is not the serious one, and that it would be maybe more difficult in the future to settle in the United Kingdom. But I think for these people who lived there for many years, actually there would be a good solution. And
that's the hope for millions of them, indeed.
United Kingdom remained European country.
In the geographical sense, of course, we have to wait and see what kind of relationship comes out of it. If we move on to another topic, we spoke about it a little bit earlier on. President Macron from France, he's really presented himself as Mr. Europe. He's been in China recently, selling France, but also selling Europe. Are we happy with the idea of Mr. Macron as Mr. Europe? I'll of course come to you, Mr. Lamassoure, but perhaps to go to Javier Nart first.
Well, France is a capital country, as Germany is. So we have to recognize that the leading powers in Europe are the leading powers, and the leading powers are Germany and France. And then it's Italy and Spain. Let us be realistic. So it doesn't mean that there is going to be, let me say, a leader with a torch to show us the way. But it is capitally important what happened in France with the appearance and with the presidency of Macron.
Mr. Lamassoure, Mr. Macron as President of France, perhaps a sort of President of Europe in a way?
No. If a national leader wanted to be Mr. Europe, it would be a total failure. France, unfortunately, was absent for 5 years politically in Europe with poor Mr. Hollande. And it was unworthy for Europe because then the German leader, Mrs. Merkel, appeared as Mrs. Europe. It was not good. There is no need for a Mr. or Mrs. Europe. There is a need for a political impetus given by the big countries, of course, for historical reason, France, Germany, but also Italy, Spain, and Poland, of course, which have to take the lead together. And if there is a common political will in all these countries, Europe can move forward. As long as it's not the case, we are at a standstill.
Well, we know that Mr. Macron has ruffled some feathers in other countries, notably Poland, your country, Mr. Krasnodębski. Of course, there are movements within the government in Poland within the last couple of days. If we look ahead into the next year, just got a little bit of time to talk about that sort of hopeful message you all brought up at the beginning. There's a European Year of Cultural Heritage, Europe trying to promote its own soft power, trying to get Europeans feeling European, talking to each other. Do you think that Europe can learn to have good relations within its very varied 28 member states?
Yeah, I hope that, you know, for me it was a little characteristic that Mr. Nat, when you are talking about Europe, you mentioned, you didn't mention the half of the continent, you know, Eastern Europe, which is actually now, you know, we are always talking this old division lines, which actually do not exist anymore. And I think that the voice of the Visegrad country group should be taken very seriously, also in the questions of the future of the European Union. And talking about President Macron, as I would like to come back, you know, in my city, when I am elected from Warsaw, there is a monument of the great French President Charles de Gaulle, and we remembered his visit in the 60s, as far as. And this vision of the Europe as a Europe of the nation, I think it was for us always very, very important. I'm a little concerned that President Macron is very federalist in the talking about, and quite utopian, I have to say.
All right, so much to look forward to in 2018. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We have just got time for one little bit of good news, however. We have debunked some more fake news. Here's Frédéric Simon with good news for fans of kebabs, that popular late-night snack.
Does Europe really want to ban kebabs? This is the shocking news that was reported in the British press just before Christmas. Europe was set to ban the famous fast food of Turkish origin, which partygoers like to snack on late at night. But fans shouldn't worry, because the initiative was nipped in the bud by the European Parliament. So, how did we actually get there? Well, it all started when a German MEP close to Angela Merkel, Renate Sommer, sounded the alarm about a proposal from the European Parliament to ban phosphates in frozen meat products. Phosphates are used as flavouring, but also serve to retain water in meat, ensuring that kebabs are kept upright when roasting on the spits. According to Mrs. Sommer, thousands of jobs were at stake if the substance was banned. However, phosphates are in fact already banned by the European Union because of the risk of heart disease they pose to consumers. But exemptions are numerous, and the Euro MPs behind the initiative wanted to put an end to them. Unfortunately for them, the huge media controversy that followed put an end to their regulatory appetite, despite a last-minute attempt by consumer groups to defend the bill. When all is said and done, phosphates still have a bright future ahead in your kebabs.
There we go, your kebabs are safe. Here's to an interesting 2018. A little freer of fake news, perhaps too much to hope. I'd like to say thank you once again to all of my guests, Mr. Lamassoure, Mr. Krasnodębski and Mr. Nart. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to you for watching. A very happy new year, and see you soon for more Talking Europe on France 24.
Revisited, presented by Stuart Norval.
In 1976, 10 years after seizing power in the Central African Republic, President Bokassa proclaimed himself emperor. 14 years of bloodthirsty dictatorship later, France put an end to his reign, but the country has